Hello, and welcome back to Catching Up to Fi. This is an episode we call On the Road with Catching Up to Fi. We have some episodes coming to you from the road, actually not from the road, from a cruise ship in these series of episodes. And I have with me today Becky and Mark. Mark is our co-host at times, and he's the co-host of these episodes. I want to say hello to them.
Hey, Bill. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, Becky. Just finished
Great.
editing an episode.
Yay. Yay. All right. Well, and then Mark is here with us. So how's it going, Mark?
I'm doing great. Always great to be with you guys.
Well, thanks for being a co-host, especially on these episodes. I think our audience will find them interesting because it's real people with real stories, and in this case, retirees that have a story to tell. This is all part of the Rock Retirement Club, of which both of you are members. Can you tell us a little bit about what the Rock Retirement Club is? And you first, Mark?
Yeah, so the Rock Retirement Club is an offshoot, I guess you would say, a membership platform for Roger Whitney's Retirement Answer Man podcast. There's a number of us in the club. I think there's about 1,000 people at this point. And basically, it's people that are just prior to retirement to, say, 5 years. So kind of that 10-year window before and after retirement, people trying to figure out, how they're going to transition from a working life to a retired life. And so it's a group of people that get together and have money conversations, but then we do cool things like go on cruises together. So yeah, that's how we got together on that one.
It was so much fun. And while we were on the cruise to Alaska on the ship, we were blessed to have several people that were willing to come and share their stories with us. And the stories were so varied and different, and we loved hearing all of them. And so we hope that you guys are going to enjoy these stories also, because these are just real people. They do happen to be mostly retired or near retirement, which means they may be a little further down the road than most of our audience. But this is what our audience is looking forward to. So we wanted you to hear from some real folks.
And these were off the cuff. These were non-scripted. So these were just, having a conversation and having the recording going.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think Becky had actually had a couple of glasses of wine for a couple of them. So you might
one of it was very off the cuff.
You might notice a little tipsiness to the episodes. We're going to use these episodes or bring these episodes out on Thursdays for the next 4 weeks. So looking forward to hearing your feedback and what you think about this style of episode. And we look forward to doing this in the future, also with members of our community from different phases of Catching Up to Fi.
That's right. So sit back, grab your favorite beverage, and enjoy the show.
Hi, and welcome to Catching Up to Fi, a podcast on mindset, money, life on the journey to financial independence. I'm Bill, and I'm a late starter.
I'm Becky, and I'm also a late starter, and we're your hosts. We're here to help you with your journey to financial independence, no matter where you're starting from.
We're going to talk to other late starters, experts, and we'll explore topics related to our mission.
Join us as we catch up to Fi together. Hello, and welcome back to Catching Up to Fi. I'm Becky Hebtig, your host, and I am here again with my excellent stand-in co-host, Mark Trautman. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing awesome. Great to be here once again.
We are still on the Alaskan Cruise. We're broadcasting today from the card room. And so you can probably hear in the background dice and cards and shuffling. And so we're here with our big group of friends. We wanted to just chat some more with some of the folks here on the cruise with us from the Rock Retirement Club. And we've got a new guest in our hot seat. So welcome to the show. Tell us, let's start with your name, where you're from, and then just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Mike. I'm from the Midwest, out of Dayton, Ohio. Been retired for a little while now, but just getting used to that lifestyle. My wife and I have been married for 45 years coming up this weekend.
Oh, awesome. Congratulations, Mike.
Oh, thanks.
That's amazing. So tell us, are you, and I'm sorry, you may have actually just said this, are you actually already retired?
Yes, we retired.
Recently retired.
In September of 21. We decided to do it together. My wife was not happy with the thought of me retiring earlier while she would have to continue to work. So we kind of scheduled that together.
Nice. Do you mind telling us what you did? What did you retire from?
Sure. So I started my career in computer science when there was punch cards on IBM mainframes back in 1978.
I am there with you, Mike. I used to carry boxes of punch cards around in college. I didn't have to do it at my job, but I definitely did in college.
So I spent my career, 43 years, working for IBM Systems and doing systems management and then software development with encryption for the last 20 years.
Awesome. And did you live in Dayton most of that time?
Yes, but there was a lot of travel when I worked for IBM.
Okay.
And that's why I left them.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we have 4 children.
Okay.
So we raised 4 kids and wanted to be a stay near home dad during that time frame.
Amazing. That's a great thing to do. And your wife worked
Yes,
also.
She did work. She worked for a hospital system there in the Dayton area.
Okay. All right. Nice. So tell us, I'm going to ask you some of the similar questions that I asked Rusty in the previous segment. So tell us about your planned drawdown versus your actual drawdown. Let's start
Sure.
there.
So thanks to many great podcasts like the Retirement Answer Man, I formulated a plan where I could set aside 5 years worth of cash before we retired, realizing that the market was near a high. And it was fortuitous because right after we retired, we had a very bad year. And so we were able to sustain our planned drawdown through the last year and a half, and we'll continue to do so for the next 3 years or so.
And how far in advance did you kind of plan on doing that? Was that like right at retirement you decided to put 5 years away, or was it like a lead up to
There was about a 2-year planning period where I was listening to podcasts left and right, trying to figure out what to do. There was a lot of help from my financial planner about building what we needed, but nothing about how do we sustain living off of it in the coming years.
And do you find having a financial planner is a benefit, and if so, in what regard?
Well, it just so happens one of my sons is a financial planner. So when we go on hikes, I draw on him as much as I can.
Is he your financial planner?
He is not. No. No, I tried to get him to be, but he was legitimate and would not take me on as a client. So we've actually had the same financial planner since 1982.
But at least he was able to help you vet that person, I presume, or were you comfortable vetting?
No, Nick was born in 1982, so at the time we got a financial planner, he was just a twinkle in our eye at that point.
So this was a person you've been working with for many years. It wasn't something that you decided to do near retirement.
Right.
Okay. And that's all working out great, I presume.
Well, I've actually decided to move away from that financial planner. As I said, they helped me build what we thought we would need, but they've not been able to sustain us going through the plan to use that money. And I just think they're very weak in the retirement area.
So you're finding that the financial planning community, as I think many people do, there are ones that are great in the accumulation phase, but then there's others that might be better in the retirement phase.
Yes, I agree with that. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So how are you planning to refill that 5 years of cash?
Sure. So we're starting off with simply cash to live off of until we start taking Social Security.
Okay.
My wife will start when she hits full retirement age at the end of next year. I'm deferring mine till age 70 so that she'll have the benefit of my greater earning power through the years if that need comes around. Mm-hmm. So the way we'll refill is watching for appropriate times to sell off equities and funnel some of that money into, right now, T-bills and CDs. That's where I'm primarily holding the money.
And where are your assets located? Do you have them spread across some pre-tax and post-tax? And
we each had 401ks that we built up over the years. Of course, when we started investing in 82, there was no such thing as a 401k or an IRA for us to invest in. So we started off outside in brokerage accounts, and we still hold some of those funds. We also did some IRA to Roth conversions and contributed the smaller amount of Roth based on our earnings through the years. So there's a good combination of different types of asset classes and groups.
And working for that firm, do you have a pension? And if so, are you drawing on it yet or anything like that?
So I'm glad you asked. It's a funny story. When I left IBM, I took a lump sum distribution, but little did I know there was a residual. And the month I turned 65, this extra Fidelity account showed up with $800 in it. And I thought, what's this? So I called. I was going to close the account. And they said, oh, that's not $800 total. That's $800 a month. So I had a little surprise boost there on a pension. But that's the only pension that we have. Everything else has been what we have saved and grown over the years.
And you have not turned on Social Security yet?
No,
correct?
We don't intend to.
And so are you using this time to do anything like Roth conversions or anything like that? Or?
Yes, and that's been a bit of work and planning, trying to figure out how much we could convert without impacting our Medicare premiums. So I'm a little older than my wife, so I started paying Medicare premiums earlier. I was not aware of this person called IRMAA. And so I was paying $500 a month right off the bat as soon as I got the Medicare age. So now I've been working on changing my Roth conversions. And so that large amount came through because we both had been working full time, and I had done an IRA Roth conversion in that 2 years prior to me retiring. And I was not aware I would be hit by this surcharge tax.
Now, if you don't mind sharing in percentage terms, do you have a significant amount in tax deferred versus Roth, or is it mostly in taxable? Or
so the qualified accounts, which are our IRAs now, we've converted all of our 401ks to IRAs. That's about 60% of our total assets. The other 40 is outside, either in Roths or in brokerage accounts.
So I presume you're thinking of what are my RMDs going to be down the road and how do I mitigate that, right?
And that's why I've been trying to do some conversions, trying to stay under that IRMAA limit.
I'm in that same position, so I know exactly where you're coming from.
And none of the numbers look good, no matter which way you go.
No, and it's
which
like,
tax
do I want to pay IRMAA?
Do
I want to pay ACA? You lose my ACA subsidy, and so forth. Yeah.
We also were hit with IRMAA, and I didn't know she existed.
Do you want to explain what IRMAA is for your audience?
And I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
Income-related monthly adjustment amount, I believe. And we have a great audience here, so please correct me if I'm wrong.
You win the prize. I think that's it. So the Medicare system basically charges you a premium if you make over a certain amount of money. And they charge you this on a monthly basis along with your Medicare premium, your Part B premium. And they look back 2 years. So the same thing happened to us. Stephen retired when he was 63 and a half, started Medicare at 65. So the 2 year look back caught his last year of work, and we had to pay. And we even used an independent insurance agent to help us with our Medicare choices. And she did not inform us that it's possible to apply for an exception. And I don't remember what they all are, but I believe there's a list of about 6 exceptions to IRMAA surcharges. And a sudden change or sudden drop in your income, as in retirement, is one of the things that is on that list.
Yes, so we looked into that. The form is SSA 44. I remember.
I love
having
an educated audience.
But the challenge was I did fill it out the first time, and it got lost in the black hole of Medicare. They did not process it. So they changed the form to be a fillable form this last year. I filled it out both for my wife and myself, and this time they processed it. But it does not work in arrears. It's only from the time they acknowledge that you have your retirement. Now going forward, your premiums are reduced. So all that $500 a month I've been paying the prior year, it's all gone to them. There's no way to get it back.
But did you get the exception starting at that point?
Yes, going forward.
Oh, okay.
The other sneaky thing that I found was it's not only earned income, but when you do an IRA to Roth conversion, that counts into what they call the modified adjusted gross income. And they throw other things in there like tax-exempt interest gets thrown into the pot. So they're accumulating other dollars that make it look like income, and that goes into this sliding scale, which are factors. And it only takes $1 over their limit to make you start paying on that next level.
Yeah, and just for everyone listening, it is looked at every year. So it's not like you're in this higher IRMAA bracket and it's forever. It's that constant 2 year look back.
And you are required to refill the SSA 44 out each year, as I understand it.
Yeah.
If you look 2 years back and it looks like your 1040 form was going to be in the higher bracket.
And the change in income happened all at once when Stephen retired. And I really was only thinking about those 2 years. And it took me a while to realize, as you said, Mark, it's every 2 years. They look back every 2 years. So if you do a large Roth conversion or you decide to take on a part-time job after you've retired for a while, or a full-time job, then there are other things down the road that could affect the IRMAA surcharge.
Or if you have brokerage accounts with mutual funds and they throw off large capital gains or dividends at the end of the year, that could throw you into the next bracket that you're unaware of.
Yeah, very important when you're talking about that $1 over, right? So you want to make sure you leave enough buffer for those extra dollars that you may not be aware of.
Right. So, Mike, when you took your lump sum, was that a choice that you had? Could you have taken a monthly check for that? And if so, how did you go through that decision process?
Right. So in terms of the pension that I received or would have received at the time, that was a number of years ago, but it would have been 1994 when I left IBM. So I was in young earning years. I thought I could do better investing that money than the low rate that the annuity was going to pay out from the pension. So that was the process I went through. I did use a financial advisor to go through some discussions on that to figure out what might be a good play.
If you were to make that decision today, would you make the same decision?
I would. I was able to take that particular income at the time into my tax considerations. If I had chosen to take the annuity in the early years, I would have to include that as earned income going forward and pay taxes every year, as I knew my salary was going to continue to increase.
So tell us, how has your spending been in retirement versus what you had planned ahead of time? Have you had any surprises there?
That's interesting. So I use an aggregator through Fidelity that takes all of my accounts in, and I have all my spending go through that, so I can see what I'm spending on a month-to-month basis. We had done budgeting ahead of time, and I had a pretty good set of spreadsheets, classic form of spreadsheets, to figure out what I thought we would spend. And we're spending less than I thought we would. Hence, we're able to be on an Alaskan cruise right now because we had excess money left over from last year.
Interesting.
And so do you look at it on obviously it sounds like you're tracking on a consistent basis, but as far as doing things like this Alaskan cruise, is that something that you look at and say, oh, we have extra money from last year, so we will do it next year? Or is it more like this is a large bucket of excess money that we will choose to spend whenever we decide to spend it?
So we built our budget based on a needs, wants, and wishes profiling. So our core spending, we're right on target. Everything I thought we would have to spend for real estate taxes and food and earned income taxes, those sorts of things are right on plan. We're not spending as much as I thought on the wants and wishes. Now, I did make an adjustment in the last year to increase the amount I'm setting aside for sinking funds. Someday I'm going to need a new roof. I'll need to buy a new car. I'll need to have replacement of windows, whatever. So we've been taking part of that budget that's kind of in the wants category and setting it aside. And then the wishes part, we had an X amount of dollars we wanted to do traveling with. And that was one of our focus areas as we retired. We wanted to go do things.
And hopefully it sounds like you've been doing those?
We have. So Good. 10 days after we get back from this trip, my wife and I are heading to Ireland with one of our sons and daughter-in-law.
Awesome.
Nice. So, Mike, tell me, do you have any other income sources besides your investments and your
the small pension?
The small pension
is
right.
the only income stream that I have. Everything else is off of the portfolio.
Okay.
And are you finding it comfortable spending from your portfolio, or was that a challenge? Or
that was an interesting thought process because I had to convince my wife mostly that we could spend money. We retired when we did because it took me about a year to convince her that we could afford to retire. I had been doing all the financial planning and the budgeting process, and she comes out of a very conservative home where her parents spent very little on anything, and so it was hard for her to make that transition.
And so were you always on the same page, or at least talking about this kind of future financial planning, or was there... Sounds like you were the numbers person.
We would do the talk. I would do the talking, I'll say, and it would put her to sleep.
Okay.
So
I was going to ask, was she doing the listening?
Yeah, our profile is if I talk finance, that's how I put her to sleep. If she wants to talk decorating, I'm out in a minute. So it works well.
And has that changed over time? Or?
No. But she's become more acclimated to the thought process that we can afford to go on trips. We can buy the extra books, although some people can't buy books on Amazon Prime. She can afford to buy books when she wants to. And it's worked out well.
Okay.
We had to take into account that we are very different people in terms of spending. And I will have a tendency to look ahead and try to plan for larger items. And she's been very conservative and very frugal. My upbringing in my home was such that both my parents obviously grew up in the Depression era, and my mother was on the extreme side, raised by a widowed mother, and it was not a good situation. And my mother took the track that she wanted to catch up later in life and spend everything she could. My father, on the other hand, came from a household where I'm Germanic in background, very frugal. You plan out what you're going to spend. You don't spend a penny more. And there was tension in the home. And I was trying to learn from them of what not to do. And I was not successful in my early years. When we got married, we didn't have a clue as to how to proceed. So the story is I graduated from college with a computer science degree. I had $0 in the bank and no car. My wife had $1,500 in the bank and a car. So I knew how to cook, and she had the car and the money. So we were the early day role reverser. Yes. And things have changed a little bit in that time frame of 45 years. But, I had to work through that thinking of she would like to be on the safety first side of withdrawal, ensuring that we have guaranteed income. I'm on the total return side. I've always been that way. From the time I was 26, I was using statistical programs to figure out how much we could grow our money, and made a lot of mistakes along the way, which I'd be glad to talk about. But, we've kind of put a plan together that we're both happy with.
So how did you fall in that spectrum if one of you was safety first and one of you was more, down strategy?
We've implemented the bucket system, and that hence the 5 years of preparation. So I could show her, here's 5 years of spendable cash based on our budget. So now she knows that we're going to have that money coming into the checking account, and we're ready to go on the budgetary aspect. All the rest of it, I can go into equities and look for future growth. One thing that an early financial advisor told me that I thought was really valuable was to pay yourself first, but not yourself today. Pay your future self first. So set money aside for your long-term life. So it's loving yourself. It's just your future self.
So you're finding that this 5-year kind of cash bucket strategy satisfies the safety first portion of the couple, right?
And then at the tail end of that window, we will both be taking Social Security. So it's going to take a burden off the portfolio,
right,
and the withdrawal rates until we hit RMD age, which now I think I'm at 73 on the current law. So I'll be deferring RMDs.
I've got a question. In your early years, how did you both look at debt?
We were both afraid of debt.
Okay.
As I said, we had very little money when we got married. I graduated April 22nd, started my job at $12,000 a year in May. We were married on July 1st with a one-bedroom apartment and an old beat-up car that she brought along. So we were just fearful. Every time we saw that checking account get below $1,000, we were like, what do we have to not spend? Do we eat macaroni and cheese all week this week, or just don't go out to eat, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So from the early days, we were always trying to focus on what we could keep our spending down to. And we sort of set up a budget even back then that we knew we had to pay taxes, and I figured out what that would be. We were charitably minded together toward our house of faith, wanted to give to that, and we wanted to pay ourselves first, which we were told, set aside 20% of your income in the early days to invest toward the future, which was quite a bit. So the net was we were living off of 55% of my income.
That's really interesting. I don't think I've ever heard anybody, because the dates that you're talking about, you've got to be the same age I am. And I didn't listen to a lot of the advice that I had when I was younger, hence, the mistakes that we made. But even if I had listened and applied it, I didn't hear anyone say save 20%.
Yeah. And where did you get that from, the 20%? Was that a book you read? Was it
That was the original financial planner from the firm that we've been using since then.
Wow.
He was an elder in our church and came to give us a 2-day seminar. And he used, of all things, the book of Proverbs out of the scriptures to teach us these principles. And it was about looking ahead and setting aside, gathering little by little. And he who wants to get rich quick is going to fall into various temptations and snares. Well, unfortunately, I didn't heed all of his advice.
Let's hear some of
Let's hear some of those. Yeah. So if you remember back in the 90s, I'll tell one story here. Gold was a big thing, always fear. And so I had a coworker at a particular place whose uncle, it's one of these stories. His uncle was selling gold out of Florida. Wouldn't you like to buy some? So I did, and it took 20 years to get back to the same dollar amount. It was a pyramid scheme. So I still have those gold coins in the safe, but they're not really of value, to us. Another one is that I decided to go invest in particular companies. When some of you in the room might remember MCI WorldCom, and lost $20,000 when that went to zero overnight. So those were bad decisions on my point because I had a fear of missing out on growth, or other people just say I had greed. And I was still, though, diligent in setting aside money for our future in mutual funds and that sort of thing. Of course, back in the 80s, Templeton World Fund was our first mutual fund, and it was an 8.5% front-end load. So you put your $100 in today, and tomorrow you have $91.50 in stock in mutual funds.
Wow.
That was before no-load funds existed, no ETFs. But those were also the days when the market was growing 20 or 30% per year back-to-back, and you sort of justified it that way.
But it sounds like if you're saving 20%, it gives you the ability potentially to make some mistakes and still not suffer really the major consequences.
I should have retired 15 years earlier had I not made the mistakes.
Wow. Well, but all of us can look back and say, if only.
Right.
None of us are going to be perfect with our decisions.
So the perseverance and the diligence of staying with the plan over time is really what helped. And the compounding growth really sustained us to get to where we are today.
And it sounds like you've primarily made your retirement successful as a result of financial assets. Do you have any real estate? Did you do anything in that realm?
No, we only have our home. We've owned 3 homes. The first home we bought with an 11% interest balloon payment at the end of 3 years. Because I didn't have a lot of income, it was hard to get a loan. And at the end of that 3-year term, I had to get an FHA loan at 12.5%. So you asked about debt earlier. My first focus foremost was to pay off that debt. So anytime I had a bonus from work or a little bit of a windfall, I would just go apply it and look at the amortization schedule, which they used to print for you, right? And say, I just jumped 5 years off of my loan. This is great. So we were able to pay off the first home and then use the equity for that into the second. And about 2.5 years before we retired, we built our third retirement home, first floor only, trying to make it compliant for future days if we ever need walkers and that sort of thing, and downsized. As I said, we raised 4 children. I didn't need 3,000 square foot with a walkout basement and 3 floors anymore. So we were able to make that move.
And did you find you had to make any changes in order to have a successful retirement? We were talking to Roger yesterday about some of those big rocks. So, for instance, downsizing your home or, selling excess vehicles. Of course, we wouldn't ask Becky to do that. Or anything like that. Or are you finding that it sounds like you have this retirement, home primarily for the fact that it's on one level and so forth, but it wasn't necessarily a downsizing decision or anything like that, or was it?
We did downsize, although I'd have to say the building costs from 20 years prior on our second house to the downsized house. The downsized house cost me twice as much in dollars as the one we had built that was much larger. So we were able to at least shift the equity over. We had already purchased the vehicles we thought we were going to go into retirement with. I did that intentionally. Rarely did I buy a new car in the early days. When we got to the tail end, that's when we really bought our first new cars under warranty to try to get us into that retirement phase.
And are you the type of person that drives this car for a long period of time, or do you get them more frequently? Or
the first car was a Mazda. I drove that about 100,000. That was in the early days, and I had one that went to 300,000. So long-term hold for my vehicles. I try to find something that I'm content with. In a family of 6, we've had a lot of cars because the kids would buy junkers, and they'd last for about a year or so, and they'd be on to the next one.
I heard a term when we were here in both Sitka and in Skagway up in Alaska, because all the vehicles need to be shipped in. They said, what was it?
Beater
with a heater for sale.
That's right.
And people will buy them and fix them up for the next year's cohort that comes in. So, yeah, obviously not a lot of new cars up here.
That's true. So, Mike, as we wrap up, I just wanted to ask you, is there anything you can, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. You can pick which one you want to answer. Was there anything in your retirement that surprised you that you want to share with us? Or is there anything that you can think of that you'd like to share with our audience?
I think I can combine both of those. We've been retired a little over a year and a half. 9 months after we retired, I had a significant health event, which was dramatic and something I had to work through. And it was just something that I had to persevere with. And I guess I've told people my view of life is that we're on a river. It has a general course. We try to plan where that course is going, but you never know what's around that next bend. Sometimes the flow is going to take you underneath a log, and you need to work through that. And persevering with people around you who support you is paramount in that. So I would encourage people to find others who perhaps are in a like mindset and challenged and work together, talk together, and live through life's issues together. That really helped me along the way.
That's great advice. But what is it about the water metaphors?
I don't know. We were talking about drowning yesterday, life jackets. We were on.
Now we're stuck in a river.
While we're, bouncing around here and the ship is creaking.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if that's coming through in the recording, but evidently we've got quite a bit of wind as we leave. Where are we today? Sitka. As we're leaving Sitka, there's quite a bit of wind and the ship is creaking. Mike, thanks so much for sharing your story with us. I think it's been very interesting. It's been wonderful. And I think our audience is really going to glean some nuggets of wisdom out of that.
Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
It was great having you.
Thanks.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Catching Up to 5. We would appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star review so that our message can reach others.
We are not lawyers, financial advisors, accountants, or tax experts. Please consult your own professional advisors before making any important decisions. Our content is for entertainment and education purposes only.
We'll see you next time on Catching Up to 5.